Hi everyone, it's Monica and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. So in my last video I showed you how to create layered cards using ephemera, but today we're going to go ahead and create some layered cards using stamps. Now I love the look of layers and you probably have figured that out by now based on some of my videos recently. But one of the things that's a little bit more difficult for people is layering with stamps. I'm not really sure why, but a lot of it is just aesthetic. You got to be able to kind of vision what's going to be in the forefront, what's going to be in the background, and plan accordingly. Now, my love for layering goes way back, and I want to share with you one of my first Tim Holtz stamps that I got when I started this obsession. And as you can see, these stamps are just, it's one stamp, but it's built-in layering, and I just love the look. Some might think it's a little bit busy, but I just love the way that it looks. And when I saw the new stamp set that just came out this year, I had an idea to try to recreate some of these. And this specifically is the one I'm going to try to recreate today for you. But I wanted to share with you some of the other cards that I've been working on, just kind of practicing. Now, if you look closely at these cards, while they're both layering, and I think I used like about 6 or 7 stamps on this particular one and only 4 stamps on this one, the technique is different. So on this particular one, I had to actually mask off the Santa after I stamped him to create my background. And I want to kind of show you a little bit closer here. So, excuse me. So as you can see, the Santa is in front and then the music is in the background. And then these other stamps are stamped on top, but they have more of a silhouette, which means that there's nothing coming through. It's just a dark stamp. So I was able to easily stamp right over the musical background. Now on this particular one, while there's a lot of layering going on, as you can see, none of the layers really touch each other. Now for this, I used this, but when I stamped it, I just blocked off some of my card so that way the music would just be on top. But if you had a smaller stamp, you could easily create the top portion. And this is the stamp that I used. As you can see, it's oversized, and I only wanted a portion of it, so I had to block off some of that. But otherwise, none of the other stamps show, or excuse me, touch. I stamped this next. I did some of my little squiggles on the side. I stamped my deer, and then I did my snowflakes. And I was trying to recreate this one here. And while the deer isn't exactly the same, you can kind of see the vibe that I was going for. I got my squiggles. I've got my music on top. I've got my sentiment on the side. And then for this particular one, I tried to recreate this one here. I've got my Santa, I've got my background, I got my holly up on top here, and then I have my sentiment. So while you can see, it's all about planning and layering. Now the set that we're going to work with today, as I alluded to, is this one here, and this is called Vintage Holidays. And I want to give you some tips on how I approach layering, especially intricate layering, right? This particular one wasn't as difficult as, say, this one, because there wasn't really any masking involved. And I knew I only had one image that was going to be in the foreground. But when you get a little bit more intricate, like this here, you definitely have to do some planning. So I want to share with you how I approach it, and hopefully you'll get some tips out of it. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out our layout. And just like any of your other layers, basically want to just kind of play with your design, figure out what's going to work best. And then once you have your layout and you figure out what's going to be on top and what's going to be more towards the bottom, then you can start stamping. So I know my Santa is going to be in the front. All right, so let's just go ahead and figure out where he's going to be here. And then I know I want something on top. I really like this here, but I also want a sentiment on top. So I probably am going to be doing some layering, something like that. My special delivery isn't going to get covered, so he will be right next to my Santa. And then I want some background, and for my background I'm going to use these 3 stamps here. So this one, it's gonna be underneath, so that's gonna probably go somewhere there. This one's gonna go somewhere here, and then these will go probably somewhere right there. And then once I have everything filled out, I will fill the background in either with some of these sparkles, maybe some snowflakes, but something to fill in the background. But this essentially is going to be my layout. Now I'm going to do some trimming, and I know that ahead of time, so you want to be as tight as possible. And when I say tight, it just means you don't want your stamps to be too spread out, because you might end up cutting off some of this beautiful images. All right, and then of course you want to make sure you're showing what you want to show. And then I am going to put something on top, probably work with this one here. I think any one of these 3 would work, but this is going to go on top here. So this essentially is my layout. So when I go to stamp, I know that I need to stamp this one first, this one second, this one probably third, and then I'll have to mask and stamp my background. So let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to do this. Okay, so I have my design laid out here, and I'm going to kind of keep that there so I can remember exactly what I'm doing. Another idea is you can take a picture of it, and I did do that. Let's see. And you can keep it here as an example as to your layout. So there's a couple ways you can work. I already know how I'm going to do it, so I'm not too concerned about watching my picture, but that's an idea as well. If you get a layout that you really like, take a picture of it so that way you can remember when you go to start stamping. All right, so this is going to be my top layer. So we're going to want to figure out exactly where we want it to go. And my Santa, I want it to be about right there, right on his coat. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're figuring out where it needs to go. And then the ink that I'm using is Archival ink, and this is the jet black. So let's go ahead and stamp our first layer. And for this technique, I would definitely recommend some sort of a stamping platform, because we want our images to be nice and crisp, and you may have to stamp a couple of times, so you want to ensure that your stamping is going to always be in the same place. Okay, so there's our first layer. Now our second layer is going to be Santa, and you're going to want to make sure that you strategically place him exactly where you want your label to cover. I want it to be around here, so once I figure that out, then I will get some of my masking paper and cover a portion of his, or a portion of the label, I should say. Now, didn't think I needed to actually do this, but I'm going to go ahead and stamp a sample just so I can get the right size. Doesn't have to be perfect. All it's going to be used for is layering. So let's just cut this really quickly here. Now remember, whatever you cover is going to affect what shows on your layers, so on your top layer. So try to get as close as you can to your image when you're cutting it, so that way you'll have nice clean lines. All right, and then we're just going to go ahead and cover this. All right, again, we're using black Archival ink. This is going to be our biggest focal point, so you want to make sure you get a nice crisp image when you're stamping. And I did pretty good placement. You can see it's exactly where I wanted it to be. I'm going to go ahead and add one more layer of ink, just to make sure I get a nice crisp image. And then for extra measure, I do like to use my heating tool to just make sure it's dry. Now, I will pick up my masking first, because I have found if I heat the masking, sometimes it's not as easy to pick up. And then I don't throw these away, especially if I'm going to make several cards, because I can use them over and over again. So as you can see, that was a pretty good stamp. And now we're going to go ahead and dry it. Okay, now we could stop there. I mean, this is a perfectly cute card. You can put a little sentiment, you'd be good to go. But we're gonna take it a step further. We're gonna add some more layering. So the next layer I want to work with is these two here. Now this is going to be my top image, and then this is going to be on the bottom. So we want to stamp this one first. His hat comes up a little bit, so that's where I'm going to try to line it up. So use the images to your advantage when you're figuring out where to put your stamps. You want it to be tight. You want it to look organic. You don't want it to look like it was forced. So we'll go ahead and we'll ink up the sentiment, and then we will stamp it. Now this one, when you go to mask it, might be a little bit more difficult because you don't have a solid image to mask. So we're going to have to think about this a minute. Do we need to mask it? You've got a lot of open space here. You might not need to mask it. Do we want to try to mask it? Maybe. I don't know yet. But I'm kind of leaning against the no mask because these are solid. So perhaps I should have stamped this one first. We're gonna give it a try here without the mask. Hopefully it'll work out. And if it doesn't work out, then we know next time we need to mask it. So I haven't created this design yet. I'm doing it for the first time on camera. So we may need to do a little bit of tweaking. But I'm gonna go for it. Okay. Now the nice thing about this image, like I said, there's a lot of open space, so we might be able to get away with not masking it. We're gonna find out right now. It's not bad, actually. Now, if you don't like that look, mask it. You know, might be a little bit more difficult because you don't have a solid image. I like the way it looks. I probably next time will stamp this one first and the sentiment second. But I don't mind the way that that looks. I think it looks pretty good. All right, so that's our second layer. Now we're definitely going to need to mask. Okay, so I went ahead and I stamped out my Santa image, and I cut him on some masking paper so I could mask him off and create my background. Alright, so I'm just trying to figure out exactly where I want my pieces to go. Now I know that I want my special delivery to show up. I don't want it covered, so we'll put that there. And then this piece will come right here. Now I could easily put this over here, but I know I'm going to cut off some of this, and I want it to be tight, and I want it to look layered. So I'm going to just make sure I'm covering part of my images here. And I think that'll work. Now, when I have several stamps, I ordinarily will do one at a time. I kind of laid it out, but I think I can still ink up one at a time. At least that's going to be my goal here, because I want to make sure that I get crisp images for every single stamp. So actually that one's pretty good for the first one, but I'm going to go ahead and do one more because I like the dark background. And as you can see, I didn't need any masking for that, so I could have easily stamped that one on its own. Now the next one I'm going to do is this one here, because again it's minimal masking, and I should be able to stamp this fairly easily. I love the stamp set. When I got it, I originally thought it had the little December calendar. I'm gonna have to go back and see if there's a stamp for that, because I really want that one. But I love some of these other pieces. Okay, now we're gonna go for these two here, and these are where you're going to get more of the layering. I'm going to take this one off because I want to make sure I get a nice crisp image. All right. So we'll stamp that next. And remember, even though it looks like it's covering it, we have that masked off. So the only part that's going to show probably is this parcel post part here. So let's go ahead and give it one more coat of ink, and then we can move on to this piece here, which is going to go. I want as much of this to show as possible because I think it's an awesome stamp. Something like that probably. And if you are not comfortable with layering, keep in mind you can stamp these out, cut them out, and then layer that way. But I just really think that the masking look is just so cool. I just loved having the one layer card with all these different stamped layers. All right, so now we get to reveal how it looks. So again, I'm going to go ahead and use this little tool here to pull up my layers. And like I said, you gotta be careful because sometimes even though it's masking, it might tear. And all it did was tear the masking of the suit, so we didn't actually tear the card, so don't freak. All right, and then again, pulling up my Santa very carefully so I don't rip my actual card. I don't want to put my fingers on it either because I don't want to get the ink on them. But as you can see, I'm just pulling off very slowly so I don't rip the bottom. If you have good masking paper, it shouldn't rip, but we certainly don't want to take that chance. All right. And there it is. So as you can see, we've got all these layers in the background. I've got my Santa. See, if I color him in, I'm going to want to make sure that I color all the way down to the label here. And then all I got to do is cover my background. Now, you don't have to do anything else at this point, but I want to add some background. And I want to be a little bit strategic about it. I don't want to have to layer everything, so I want to use snowflakes so that way I can control where my stamping goes. Now if you wanted to have a big background such as this here, you'd have to cover all of that, and I don't want to do that. So we're just going to add some snowflakes to fill in some of that white space. And I'm going to do it on the wood here. And I'll start out with the bigger snowflakes, and then I'll move into the smaller ones. And I'm probably going to be cutting some of this off, but again, I like it to look organic. So let's just fill in the spots and then we can worry about what we're cutting off after the fact. So I'll do a smaller snowflake here. And I'm looking to fill the background. I don't want a lot of white space on my layered cards, so that's why I'm coming in with the snowflakes. It's just the little details, I think, that finish off the card. And then, now a lot of these stamps that I'm using, other than, you know, the main ones here, which are new, some of these stamps I've had for a while, but snowflakes are easy to find. You can find snowflakes on a lot of different stamp sets. So go through your stash and see what you have as far as backgrounds. It doesn't have to even be a snowflake. Maybe you want to put, you know, something else. But when you're looking for fillers, you just want to have small stamps, and it doesn't necessarily have to be from that particular set. All right, so I think we'll do one more there, and that will do it. So at this point, we're done. All you need to do is decide how you're going to trim it, decide if you're going to mat it onto black cardstock or whatever cardstock you're going to use, and then finally decide if you're going to color it in. So just using different stamps and different stamp sets, you can see you can get as intricate in your layering where you have to mask, or you can simplify it. It's completely up to you. But this new set here, this vintage Christmas set, is perfect for Christmas backgrounds and layering. So hopefully I didn't intimidate you too much and you've enjoyed my process. And again, my idea was just to give you some ideas and some tips for layering. There's a lot of ways you can change this up, but I hope that you give it a try because it really is fun. And quite honestly, I think it looks great black and white. I may not even color these. So as always, I'll leave a list of all the products that I've used to create these cards along with the links to the stores. And if you've enjoyed my video, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And do me a favor, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the layering. I know that I've shared with you layering with ephemera pieces, and now I've shared with you layering with stamps. What type of layering do you prefer? Do you prefer layering with ephemera, or do you like the look of the layered stamps? All right, everybody, thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again next time.